Hi folks, today we are approaching romance in your tabletop RPG. How to keep player-driven romance fun and comfortable for everyone at your table. Now, there are games that are very heavily geared towards romance, that are built into the structure of the system. But you can add romantic elements to any game. Like, you could even have a romance, I guess, in a dungeon crawl. And there are some things that I think is really important to keep in mind, especially for character and player-driven romance. Now, the advice in this video is going to be both for game masters as well as players. Now, romance is not going to be for everyone, which is why I think the first point that I'm going to bring up is go over some consents and boundaries. This is a great time to go over that in a session 0. Bring up like lines and veils or X card and kind of feel out if you as a player know, I would like there to be a romantic element. Let's kind of gauge how comfortable everybody else is going to be. You can talk about like, what are the acceptable layers of intimacy that we're going to play out? Where are we going to fade to black? As well as, is it going to be only like player to player, or is there opportunity for NPC and player? Now, sometimes you might not really envision a romance happening in your RPG until it kind of starts to happen. So these kinds of like check-ins don't necessarily have to happen during session 0, but perhaps when it seems like, hey, this is a route that the players may be interested in going down, GMs, this is a great opportunity for you to just kind of like, before or after session, have a quick check-in and say like, hey, are you interested in doing this? Let's make sure that, especially if it's 2 players, these 2 players are both on board. If it's a player and an NPC, like you as a game master can check in. Because also, maybe you as a game master aren't interested in running a romance. Or you are, but you want to make sure that it's at a level that you are comfortable with. My second point is all about player agency and ownership. I think especially when you're introducing romantic elements, this is why it's very important that it's player-driven. I think a lot of those should be really like the player is the one who is asking for that kind of relationship and is perhaps taking the reins a little bit on driving where it goes. And if you are introducing romance, keep in mind like playing out the story of the character, keeping whatever is happening with the character true to that person and not really letting the romance define who that person is, especially for player characters. But I think this can also bleed over into NPCs for game masters who are running things. My third point is a little bit more for game masters, and that's weave the romance into the character arc. Any kind of romantic relationship or any like super important relationship are really great for driving the emotional stakes. Great opportunity for conflict and vulnerability, as well as, encouraging a like storyline element, but it allows for those character arcs to really develop. Because you might have a character that opens up to a romantic relationship about something that maybe they haven't opened up to the rest of the party about. And let the romance storyline intersect with the greater storyline. Maybe you have a rescue mission. Perhaps there are shared goals within that romantic relationship, and that's how they meet. And then a romantic relationship buds as they are seeking revenge, or whatever the shared goal is. Doesn't have to be a revenge. Could be revenge. I think keeping it meaningful and relevant to the story makes it kind of tie in together. It doesn't, now, not every single story moment needs to be related to the romantic relationship, but finding ways to kind of interweave them, perhaps is a better word, is going to just make the gaming experience and the story you all are telling better. A big thanks to all of our patrons, especially Alicia. If you enjoy our videos, make sure you're subscribed, and then after this video, head on over to patreon.com/rollforinitiative and check out the perks of being a patron. It's the best way to directly support us. All right, let's get back to the video. Okay, I touched on this a little bit with point 1, but keep things respectful and tasteful. This is why it's important to set these kind of like, what is everybody okay with? What is everybody's boundaries? Fade to black when you need to. I think a lot of times with romantic relationships, focusing on the romance over any kind of sexual element is perhaps the more important thing to do around the table. You can allude that, they're going off, and maybe in character the characters talk a little bit about it, but you don't need to roll for a sexual encounter. That tends to get just gross. I've heard stories about people rolling for STDs or pregnancy, and I think just unless that's how your group wants to play, if that's how your table wants to play, okay, I don't particularly want to play that way. So it's for some, perhaps not all. Along with this tasteful, keep in mind, don't let the romance or this relationship between these two people hog the spotlight. There are more characters there, unless you're running a 2-character campaign and they happen to be in a relationship. But most of the time, there are going to be more characters. There's a bigger storyline. So don't make it all about this relationship, and make sure that the other characters are getting their spotlight. The other characters are getting chances to interact, especially if it's an NPC, with those characters. And don't have every single storyline and every single quest be about the relationship. My 5th point is to check in and keep communication lines open, both in your bigger group and also maybe in some more private one-on-one conversations. Game masters, check in. How does everybody feel? Is there something that happened at the table that felt maybe this was going a little bit too far? Okay, we can now pull it back and make sure that everyone's enjoying the game. I think especially if you have a really intense romantic relationship, or perhaps things got physical, that's a really great point to check in after the session and just kind of be like, hey, how is everybody feeling about this? Players, this is also a really good thing to do with your other players. If you're having a player-to-player character relationship, check in, see how they're doing, and all of that. Also, I think, be mindful about how the relationships bleed. I have heard great stories about people who their characters have started a romantic relationship, and then the 2 players started a romantic relationship, and they dated, and they got married, and they've been living happily ever after. But I've also heard some horror stories where it has started bleeding for one person, and the other person, is keeping it separate. And it's no, we're friends, but I have no interest in you. My character has an interest in your character. And that created a rift within the group and has caused the group to break up. Or there's been resentment among other players about, oh, it's always about these characters, or I don't know, is this relationship beyond just their characters? And, that stuff is a little private, but also perhaps if you are officially dating, let the rest of the people around your table know, hey, yes, we are now in a real life relationship. For game masters, perhaps especially if you're doing an NPC to player character relationship, think about it kind of as a story plot. There's the start, there's the rise, there can be conflict, and then a resolution. Let it evolve organically, but also you can kind of nudge things along. Even for player-to-player relationships, as the game master, you can maybe help nudge things along, give opportunities for these relationships to evolve within the game in things that feel very organic. Overall, I enjoy a little bit of romance at the table. I don't think I've actually played out any romance between my character and another character, but I've been in games where there's been romance within other player characters, and I've played characters who've had a crush on another character, and it just never went anywhere, or something happened and they went, oh, nope, don't feel that way anymore. But yeah, I think if you do see that, yes, a romantic relationship seems like something that is going to happen in the table, follow these steps, and I think it's going to result in a really fun experience. Everyone at the table is going to be comfortable. You're not going to be putting somebody in a situation where it's I signed up for a dungeon crawl and now we're in a smutty romance novel, because not everybody is going to want to play out romance at their tables. GMs, really check in with your players if you are introducing a romantic element, opportunity for the players. Check and see if that's something that they're interested in. And if they're not, then, don't do that. If you have players, if you want to have romantic relationships, but you have somebody at your table who's like, this isn't for me, you can all talk together and perhaps find a good balance. I think of it kind of maybe in a similar way to like people who are like, shopping is not for me. Like, okay, as a game master, I will keep that in mind and I will provide the shopping opportunities to the players who want it, but I'm going to make sure that it's not a ton so that the player who does not want it is not sitting there bored out of their mind or uncomfortable. And I think that's the uncomfortable element is why the romance, it's so important to really go into it with an element of like consent and boundaries, just because even if the two players who are involved in the romantic relationship with their characters are consenting to it, like the rest of the party is also sitting at the table and they're going to experience like watching it play out. And I've had players at my table who have expressed like, romance in game makes me so uncomfortable that it's not a fun experience for me. So with that in mind, I can be like, okay, cool, maybe, if we play a game and this person's not in it, we'll have a romantic element to it. Or, find some, if I have players that really, really want to have a romantic element in the game, maybe it's finding a compromise of like, okay, well, what is it that makes you really uncomfortable and we won't do that? What are your boundaries? What are the things that you're comfortable with? Like with lines and veils, you can have, this is a line, this is a veil. I'm comfortable with it as long as it doesn't get played out explicitly, or if we can have certain elements that are fades to blacks versus I'm not comfortable with it at all. Have you had any romance storylines within your games? I would love to hear how they went. Did you run into issues with them? Did they go smoothly? Let's talk about it down below in the comments so we can all kind of learn from each other's experiences or just share the cool stories, because I know I love sharing the stories that happen at my table with other folks. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you are subscribed and give the video a thumbs up, and also consider heading on over to our Patreon and supporting us there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye!